Okay. Good morning. Good morning. My name is Carlos Clos. I'm from the Universidad Carlos III de Madrid in Spain, and I'm the session chair for this session with three very interesting papers. The first one is from the University of Michigan. We have Caitlin Holman and Stephen Aguilar, who will present the talk called GradeCraft, What Can We Learn from a Game-Inspired Learning Management System?
Thank you. So my name is Stephen Aguilar, this is Kate Holman, and we're going to talk about GradeCraft today. But before we get started, I just want to kind of make some acknowledgments, because this is really a team project like most of our projects are. So Barry Fishman is both of our advisors, both Kate and I's advisor, and he's really a thought partner in this. Mika Levac-Manti is a political science professor, so when we talk about the course, it's his course that we'll be talking about. Stephanie Teasing and Steve Lon have also done a really good job just kind of helping us think through some of these issues that we'll be talking about. And Scott Tishiyama and Corey Kaufman-Schofield are really kind of Kate's thought partners when it comes to coding that I know very little about. So just a quick overview. We're going to kind of leverage one of the themes of LAK, which is this idea of a middle space, because we feel very strongly that GradeCraft is a system that kind of sits in this middle space. And then we're going to kind of talk about game-inspired design and what that means in terms of self-determination theory. Then I'll briefly talk about kind of the political science example where a lot of these thoughts get operationalized. And then the majority, hopefully the chunk of the time, Kate will talk about the actual system of GradeCraft, its affordances, how it's designed, and what we're thinking about. And then we'll kind of spend the last time just thinking about future directions and where we think we need to go, and we welcome any input as well. So let's talk about this middle space. So there's learning, and then there's analytics, and then there's what we believe, GradeCraft, which kind of sits in the middle. So really bad. So we believe that GradeCraft sits in this middle space because it provides learning and analytics support. Specifically, kind of the management of gameful learning. Oh, get this going. There we go.
Yeah, that's better.
Yay. Thank you. Okay. So it really helps whenever we're thinking about game design, game-inspired design, or kind of the pejorative gamification. There's a lot of things to manage. So GradeCraft helps to manage these things. It helps us explore and visualize student subgroup behavior. So for big lecture courses, there's always pockets of students that we don't necessarily understand, and GradeCraft is kind of one of the ways that we can begin to unpack or understand the relationships of these subgroups. It provides traditionally concealed student process information. So what we mean by process information is kind of whenever students take a course, they're making decisions throughout that course about what assignments they're going to do, why they're going to do it, and we're beginning to start to capture some of that data. And it also allows students and instructors to visualize their own performance, both their absolute performance and their performance relative to their peers. So first, just a very quick clarification point. We feel strongly that game-inspired design does not equal gamification. So what do I mean by that? So gamification is this idea that started to get traction in business circles and some education circles, and it's idea of extrinsic motivation. So a perfect kind of example of this that I found was just this idea of you give students coins, you give them tokens, and they're just going to chase them, right? And that they're going to be motivated because you just layer on this kind of really superficial element. And we believe that this is actually pretty clumsy and inauthentic. So this is what it looks like in practice, right, when we try to gamify something that's not traditionally gamified. So what do we mean when we mean game-inspired? So we're taking a lot of principles from James Paul G. and his book on what we can learn from video games and literacy. And we're only going to talk about kind of two principles here, the first one being the psychosocial moratorium. And one example is in video games that you see is that you get Mario and you can just keep failing over and over and over, and the game really doesn't punish you, so you don't necessarily feel bad by failing. Another example is this multiple routes principle. So whenever you play a video game, you can really just kind of play it the way you want. So we have kind of, if you want to play with your friends and collaborate, you can kind of do that. Or if you kind of feel that you want to be challenged, and just kind of do it on your own, you can do that as well. So these are kind of the principles that good video games and really good learning environments start to leverage, right? And this is what we feel we're starting to get a handle on, not in video game design. This is our inspiration. That's why we use game-inspired design as opposed to gamification. But why is this important? So this is important for a couple of reasons. Self-determination is one of the theoretical lenses that we use that was kind of made by Ryan and Desi in 2002. So there are really kind of three things that game-inspired design helps to do. It helps to enhance students' feeling of autonomy. So they can self-regulate behavior and self-organize. It enhances their feelings of relatedness. So it's not just them, it's them in the course in relationships to their peers. And it also helps enhance their feelings of competence. So a lot of these, the course I'm going to talk about, has manageable tasks that it really start to promote internal motivation. So what does this look like when we actually take it out of a video game and try to put it in a course? There's a course at the University of Michigan, Political Science 101, which is the Introduction to Political Theory, that has an atypical or game-inspired grading system. And what it does is it has 60% of the student's grade controlled by them, and then a traditional 40% is controlled by the instructor. So when I say control, I actually mean that they get to choose which assignments they're doing, and they also get to choose the relative importance of those assignments, so they can choose the weights. So if I'm a really good writer, I can choose to make the essay and the blog worth a lot more than a new media project or a group project, and you can also do the inverse. So they're really kind of two decision points that students start to have control over that they wouldn't normally have in the traditional course. So that's kind of a brief overview that kind of sets the stage in terms of why we needed a system to start managing all of these things. So I'm going to hand it over to Kate, who will actually get into GradeCraft.
Thank you. Okay, so now for the details. The tech specs of GradeCraft are, it is a Ruby on Rails app completely custom built by myself and the two people that Stephen mentioned earlier, Corey Kaufman-Schofield and Scott Toshiyama. It's got a SQL database behind it. It's currently deployed at the University of Michigan on our servers, but we've also had great success running it on Heroku, which is a Rails hosting space. It's completely open source. It's available for anyone to check out on GitHub. If you're interested in running a course, let me know. Especially let me know if you're interested in hacking on it a little bit. So in 2011, I had the opportunity to TA for a game-inspired course. And it was really exciting. The students were very engaged in the content. We were seeing indicators that they were motivated by the course design. But we were also seeing that they were confused, really confused about how they were actually doing in the course, and a little bit scared, trying to figure out how it was that they were going to succeed in this new course design. And so GradeCraft as a concept came about as a direct response to the student question, how am I doing? And what do I need to do to make it through this course? So if we look at the student dashboard, this is the home page of GradeCraft. This is what every student logs in and sees. The primary piece is that at the very top, they see two bar charts. One which tells them how many points they have right now out of points that are available in the course so far, so date-based. And this student has done fantastically. They've actually earned more points than are available at the moment, which means that they've not missed any deadlines and they've done extra work. They've gone beyond. And you can see as well that they've made it almost 2/3 of the way through the points that are available throughout the entire semester. So they're well on their way to doing well in this course. Next, the question that we often get is, how am I doing compared to everybody else? And as the game space that we're in, one of the requests we regularly get is, hey, I want a leaderboard. And we can see this from teachers actually saying, hey, this is game space, let's add this function in. And we're actually shying away from this at the moment, very purposefully, because we think that the explicitness of leaderboards, the ranking, actually may act as a demotivating function. And so for the moment, what we're showing is this box and whisker plot. And there's been a lot of talk about helping students to actually understand these types of charts this morning. And so at the moment, that's being handled in courses themselves, where instructors actually review how to read these charts. I think long-term we'll probably actually build that into the system, a little bit of a tutorial to help students figure that out. The next thing that we really want to help students think more broadly about is how they're doing compared to what the instructor intended them to get from this course. And so we're building a way for instructors to tie their learning objectives that they establish at the outset to specific assignments and to specific achievements the student completes throughout the course. And then to display this to the students through a chart of learning objectives and how they've completed them. The next thing that becomes crucial is allowing students to plan. As Stephen mentioned earlier, students have so many choices in these courses. It's really crucial for them to be able to plan, for them to look at everything that's available to them and to say, hey, I know I do well on this. I'm going to choose that. Or, hey, I don't know how well I do on that, but I'd like to try. What happens? What happens if I do that and I only get a C? And so we've built a grade predictor tool that literally allows them to go through and mark which things they think they're going to do. Hey, I'm going to miss class there. I'm going to miss those points. Where can I make it up? And to actively engage, have complete autonomy, going back to the self-determination theory, over what they're working on. Okay, so now how does this fuel up? We've talked a little bit about the student, what they're getting out of the system and analytics there. But now, because we have information not only about how students are performing, not only, and with the system, we're actually tracking what they're doing in the system, how engagement, in that sense, logins, how many times they're using the predictor, those basic metrics. We also have another really interesting piece of data, which is we have a little bit of process data. We have more information. We're tracking what items they're planning to do, how they think they're going to perform on them, and what that cumulative grade is going to be. And so we're actually able to see a predicted grade that they've done recently. This is the current instructor homepage, what they see when they log in. And we're trying to provide really simple visualizations that will allow instructors to have a sense for how their students are doing. The other thing that we're attempting is, because these courses are so varied, we've only done 3 courses so far, and they've all been dramatically different. And so we're building a lot of system flexibility. And so we are allowing instructors to pick any metric that we're tracking and to then highlight for themselves if they're concerned about a student performance against that. So very briefly, this is an instance of highlighting attendance. Anybody who's failed, who hasn't been to quite enough classes according to what this instructor would like. Anybody who hasn't engaged in active planning according to predictor use. And here, anybody who's deviating from their own plans, we're highlighting those. Other things we're thinking about, we're working on showing to the instructor, predicted scores over time, how different subgroups actually perform on a specific assignment, then on a specific assignment type, how the entire class performs according to the scoring guideline. And then for course support, students, as Stephen mentioned, have the opportunity to actually determine how much weight they're going to put on things and which things they're going to engage in. So this last visualization is seeing where students are placing weight and, in fact, who's not engaging in this assignment at all. So you have an idea of that from the instructor perspective. Future directions. Right now, it's very descriptively analytically based. We want it to eventually move to knowing, being able to predict who it is that needs a little bit more help, what it is that we need to do more. We're still trying to get a sense for what it is that instructors and students need to see to be able to do well within this space. Right now, we're handling that by making it as flexible as possible, but long term, we want to take the burden off of the instructor for having to guess and manipulate through the interface to understand what their core pieces is, and we all want to be able to make recommendations as to what it is that they should be looking at. And then the last really complicated piece is that GradeCraft is only valuable to the student as long as there's current information. So there's still that roadblock of making sure that the most current and valuable information is in there. So ultimately, we need to be working on building much better, more engaging grading tools for the instructors, which is leading us to think that we may even need to gamify the grading system. So that is where we are. Questions?
Thank you. Thank you for your talk. I really like your approach, the game-inspired approach. I have a little different question that is kind of a side question. I just saw a slide where there were student names on it and even email addresses.
Yeah.
And I've seen that in another talk before. So I would like to know how you're dealing with data privacy and what students think about.
So absolutely everything you've seen today. So I actually wrote complete neutral sample data. And so, because as we're building the system, we need to be able to test against as close to real data as possible. So it's all faked. There's no, in terms of privacy concerns, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so for the instructors, that's information that they're seeing already, so they know which students they have that information, and they in theory already know their grades. So as long as it stays within the course, I think we're in a pretty safe place. At the University of Michigan, for the most part, we don't have an opt-in system. Students are automatically opted in as long as we use their data to understand teaching within the institution. So everything we're doing, we're trying to understand how learning is happening and what analytics tools we can use to support learning within the institution. So whenever we're sharing data, we're not sharing real data. All, like Kate mentioned, all this information is essentially fake data, just to show it to you guys.
So the instance of displaying class standing would be a deviation from that, right? That we are actually showing a metric that displays some sense of how the whole class is performing. Keeping privacy is another reason to avoid leaderboards, for sure.
Can you give me a sense as to what student feedback was like on this? I know with gamification, and sometimes you get very adverse responses from students who feel that it's well, whatever, it shouldn't be done in a university course. Sometimes they think it's really cool. And so I'm just curious what kind of spread in this course you had as far as feedback from students.
So in all the courses we've worked in so far, we've seen a full spectrum. We've seen students who were incredibly excited. As I mentioned, the research so far indicates that it is motivating students who we would expect normally to not be as motivated in the course, and there have been instances of that.
So what we didn't share is that we've also kind of have kind of a research agenda around this. So it's not just, we really just want to take this as an opportunity to showcase the tool. But we do have information about student motivation profiles and surveys that we used to try to understand kind of where students were coming in. Some anecdotal feedback in terms that we got via interviews is that there's initial confusion with a system like this because it's a paradigm shift for students. But after they get over that confusion and the choices are opened up to them, there's a lot more buy-in. So the feedback that we've gotten is by and large very positive. So some of the outcome variables that we measure is whether or not students feel that they're in control over their grade, whether or not students feel that the grading system enables them to earn the grade that they want. And all of this information kind of has shown us that for the most part, students do like kind of, at least for this course, how that grading system was designed.
Sonnetor, University of Amsterdam. So it might be the case that not all students necessarily are motivated by the same thing, and as you've already indicated, that a leaderboard might be demotivating to others, and I think it might be motivating to some. Would it be interesting, in your opinion, to sort of try with analytics to see what motivational strategies or what game-inspired features are working for students, and thereby not have just one size-fits-all game solution, but really personalize that?
Absolutely, that's definitely a long-term goal. It's a question of building the features and then building the resources to be able to test them, and to do it in a large enough class where we can say, you know, we've tested this among this group and we've tested the same course and the same experience with a different tool set.
Yeah, and it's in line with kind of our kind of design focus anyway. So the grade predictor is one example of the not one-size-fits-all approach, where students really get to kind of, using the terminology, get to play with their grade, and whatever we can do to kind of support that. I think that we will do. So if they can design their dashboard so that they actually create the experience that they want, that's fine, as long as it doesn't start to extend within the bounds of kind of the data privacy that we've already mentioned.
Okay, the next presentation has also to do something with craft. It's the craft group in EPFL in Lausanne.